Earlier people were a little eccentric. Different cultures and traditions around the world have their own quirks. Let's explore 5 crazy things our ancestors used to do every day. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. First and second sleep. There are people who sleep twice a day, or break down their sleep into 2 parts, i.e. 6 to 7 hours of sleep during the night, and 2 to 3 hours of sleep during the day. Well, this is a very common practice, and it's been followed since the Middle Ages or earlier. Biphasic sleep, or diphasic sleep as some people call it, is a practice of sleeping 2 periods over the course of 24 hours. But don't confuse it with a nap. A nap is a short sleep taken in between 12 hours, counting from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. A nap can also be considered as a kind of biphasic sleep if we consider the philosophy of taking 2 sleeps in a complete day. Nevertheless, Europeans during the Middle Ages were known to practice biphasic sleep. Here, the sleep was split into 2 phases, which were known as the first sleep and the second sleep. Both periods of sleep were equally divided, and in between, people would perform their prayers, usually between 2 a.m. and 3, or they'd have sexual intercourse. A book named At Day's Close, Night and Time Past by Roger Eckrich reveals that people during the Middle Ages used to sleep early in the evening, just after sunset. During that time, there were no artificial lights, so as soon as it was dark, people used to go to sleep. However, Eckrich also noted that some people during the pre-modern period used to sleep throughout the night. Another book, Night in the Middle Ages, authored by Jean Verdon, says that people in the Middle Ages had diverse sleeping patterns. Children were advised to sleep for 9 to 10 consecutive hours during the night, and for the youngers, the patterns associated with their interests. Medieval monks also had different sleeping patterns. In contrast to the rule of Saint Benedict, the monks used to go to bed around 7 p.m. and then wake up for prayers around 2 a.m. A few monastic rules allowed the monk to have a second sleep, whereas other monks would stay awake until sunrise. Number 4. Post-mortem photography. Taking photographs of dead people might sound very bizarre today, but it was very common and widely practiced by our ancestors. The concept of post-mortem photography dates back to the late 19th and early 20th century, when the recently deceased were photographed with their loved ones to preserve their memories. During this era, when the epidemic of typhus, diphtheria, and cholera claimed thousands of lives of American children, it was also difficult for most people to afford photographs. Therefore, the only picture they would take with their children was usually after their death, as a memory. The concept of daguerreotype, or the process of photography, was invented in 1839 by Louis-Jacques Mondaguerre. Earlier, the process was used to capture the images of famous people, but it was soon used for those who were grieving over their loved ones. The initial post-mortem photography usually covered close-up shots of a face or a whole body. The subjects were dressed in their best attire, and they were depicted in a way to show them in deep sleep, or they were arranged to look lifelike. The photographs were taken to portray their last social presence. Children were usually in a crib or on a couch with their favorite toys or with their family, usually the mother. Generally, flowers were common in post-mortem photography. Sometimes metal stands were used to support the body, and pupils were painted on the eyelids to make the subject look alive. At the beginning of the 20th century, the concept of post-mortem photography vanished. Photography became cheaper, and people started taking photographs of their children while they were alive. Such photography, however, is still practiced in America by parents who experience stillbirth. These parents are photographed with their stillborn child, and they're remembered on websites like Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. Number 3. Bloodletting. Bloodletting is a method of curing illnesses or disease by withdrawing blood from patients. The history of bloodletting dates back to 3,000 years ago, but since the late 19th century, it's been questioned for treating many ailments. The practice started among Egyptians, followed by the Greeks, Romans, Asians, Arabs, and then extended into Europe in the Middle Ages and during the Renaissance. During the 19th century, the practice reached its peak in Europe. Let's get to know how this actually started. Hippocrates believed that the existence on Earth is represented by air, fire, earth, and water. And in the humans, the counterpart are the 4 humors, which include phlegm, blood, yellow bile, and black bile. It was believed that when a person fell ill, it was because of an imbalance of these 4 humors within the body. For this, It required practices such as purging, bloodletting, diuresis, catharsis, and many more. Later, the method of bloodletting was divided into arteriotomy, venesection, and many other methods like leeches and cupping. When Charles II had a seizure, he was treated with bloodletting, and 16 ounces of blood was removed from his left arm and 8 ounces from cupping. He was reported with more seizures and was treated further with guanine and herbs. 28 ounces of blood was removed from his body before he died. Apart from this, the treatment of George Washington also aroused a controversy when he was treated with bloodletting after developing fever and respiratory distress. He died the next day after being diagnosed with shock and epiglottis. There have been many arguments over the practice of bloodletting by many practitioners, and today it's used in Western medicine for select conditions. Phlebotomy therapy is used to cure conditions like polycythemia vera or hemochromatosis. Leech therapy has also made a comeback in the last 25 years, and it's being used in the areas of reimplantation surgery and microsurgery. People still wonder what made the practice of bloodletting persist for so long, especially when it was surrounded by so many questions and controversies. It has been ascertained, however, that bloodletting is not effective for many ailments, but it does work for some. Number 2, dresses for boys. Believe it or not, there was a time when even boys used to own girls' dresses. Yes, during the modern history period, which can be dated back from the 16th century to the early 19th century. It was normal for boys of certain ages to wear dresses. It's rumored that during that time, the cost of clothing was so high, so dresses were easier to make and cheaper. Another reason that came forward was that it was quite difficult for the children between the ages of 4 and 8 to unbutton pants quickly. So to make it easy to go to the toilet, these children wore dresses. There have been no strong shreds of evidence to explain why boys wore dresses, however. The reason can only be speculated. Even the royal families adopted the trend at that time. The only evidence left behind are the paintings, which show both men and women wearing long-skirted garments, referred to often as dresses or gowns. However, the dresses of the women were slightly different than those of the men. It was up until the Renaissance when the clothing style of younger men began to see a new change. The youngsters started wearing tunics with long hose. These long hose gradually were modified into the pantaloons or modern trousers that we wear today. Eventually, grown-up men started wearing pants, but boys still wore dresses. The reason behind this is not mentioned in any literature. It may be because of the mother who cared for the children. Maybe she didn't think it was that important. Well, during the reign of Queen Victoria, a change was seen in the dressing style of children. When the Queen ascended the throne in 1837, she became a role model to other people around the world. She made her 9 children wear other styles of clothes, such as kilts and sailor suits, and this made her children look more natural and normal, at least by our standards. This, however, became a child-friendly style of dressing, which quickly gained popularity all over Europe. Eventually, with the changing style, children's clothes showed more variations, and by the end of the 19th century, there were various kinds of informal clothing in use by children of all ages. Number 1. Bathing machines. Pamela Anderson running in that iconic red swimsuit, or the Hasselhoff jumping into the water. None of these would have ever been possible if we continued to do what our ancestors did back then. What did they do? They invented a bathing machine. Not that long ago, the concept of walking down the beach in your favorite bikini was the last thing you could imagine. The world has come a long ways in terms of accepting nudity around beaches, with nude beaches doing the rounds on social media. However, there was a time when not only women, as some might think, but also men were not allowed to bathe in the ocean in their swimsuits. Back then, swimwear was not deemed appropriate to make a public appearance, even at the beach or to get inside the ocean. This is where the bathing machine comes into practice. These were simple sheds with wheels at first sight. However, once you start exploring them, they're actually bathing spaces made with wooden walls and movable so they can be pushed around to where people wanted to bathe. You'll find hundreds of pictures with these structures kept in one corner, and people standing and sitting around waiting for their turn. It's believed that even Queen Victoria had her own bathing machine, and she used it on a private beach. The beach remained private property until 2012 when it opened for the first time to the public. The bathing machine, with the shed and ladder that was used by Her Royal Highness in the 19th century, was open for visitors to see. The machine was later pushed over a ramp with the help of horses. Anyway, once you are into the bathing machine, the machine is pushed into the water where you then get access to the water. You can now open the door, use the attached ladder, and get down into the water. The need for gender segregation was also another thing that was addressed during this process. Thus, bathing machines help protect one's modesty, especially women. The idea of the bathing machine started to erode in 1901 when Great Britain ended sex segregation. It was by 1920 that these bathing machines were turned into beach huts. Attention top fivers, we have breaking news. The most entertaining channel on YouTube is finally here, and they're giving away free iPhone X's. All you have to do is subscribe to win. It's full of super exciting cool facts, riddles, life hacks, and mysteries to keep you entertained. But don't take my word for it. Click on the screen to see the latest video, or click the round yellow sun-looking button and subscribe now. The link is also in the description. See you there!